The knockout punch, the actual knockout punch is to make two punches sound like one.
Simultaneous.
Yeah.
When you want a knockout, you make two punches sound like one.
The opponent's mind is so preoccupied on the one punch, which rattles him just a little bit, and that's when the other punch comes in.
This is great advice for aspiring knockout punchers, but it also tells you a lot about how you should be drilling your jab defense, or more accurately, your jab cross defense. Because the jab and cross land at almost the same time, your jab and cross defenses need to go together. In other words, you need to use them in pairs. There are many options to master, but to keep this video relatively short and beginner friendly, we're going to narrow our focus on 5 lead hand cross defenses you can pair together with the basic rear-handed jab catch to take away 2 punches in one beat. All 5 of these techniques are easy to learn. Many are built off of fundamental guard positions you probably already know. They don't require great timing like most head movement or parrying techniques. They're easy to fit into almost any drill, and they all leave your head and feet free to move, so you can layer your defense, follow up, or disengage however you please. Now, be forewarned, some of these defensive pairs will leave you open in places, but here's the thing, you will know where. More importantly, you'll know you're not open to the jab or the cross, which are the fastest and shortest punches, and some of the hardest to read. This will make reading the next punch much easier, since you've freed up a lot of mental bandwidth and the opponent has fewer punches left to work with. So, while these 5 defensive pairings won't solve all of your problems, they will set you up in strong starting positions as soon as your opponent initiates their attack, giving you built-in defense, access to a range of tools, and the freedom to transition to just about any technique. But before you can use any of these defensive pairs, you're going to need a strong rear-handed catch. So let's quickly review those mechanics now. Catching should be your number 1 most practiced and most reliable jab defense. I often tell beginners to think about it like holding the pads, but doing a bad job and stuffing your partner's punches on purpose. We catch the jab in the palm of the hand. In this case, the rear hand, but you can of course catch with both. Here's how I teach the basic rear-handed catch. In one motion, spread your fingers, turn your glove forward, and drive your palm along the opponent's jab lane, meeting the punch firmly on their center line, about 3 to 6 inches in front of your face. If you're not clear on the center line, check out this video. This is the end position. How you get there depends on where you start, your guard, your stance, your hand positioning when you initiate the movement, but all good catches will be short, strong, straight on, and all arm. It's a very simple movement and you need to keep it that way. Move as little as possible. Keep the elbow down and do not rotate your torso. This is one of the rare techniques in boxing that you shouldn't be putting your hips and shoulders behind. It is all arm. So if you habitually turn your shoulders into your catches, stop. It happens naturally all the time because it gives the catch more power and more reach while still keeping the hand close to your face. This can be beneficial, but when done unconsciously, it's a problem as the rotation moves your head into the cross lane and makes same side catch encounters much less effective because you have less room to turn into the punch. Don't get me wrong, there are good reasons to turn the hips and shoulders with catches occasionally, but these commitments need to be deliberate, not unconscious. If you're not setting anything up, your default unconscious catch should be all arm. Here's my number 1 tip for catching the jab. Don't swat down, drive forward. A lot of beginners' catches go with gravity, and this swatting motion is where the jab feint to hook can get you in trouble. Swatting or catching down forces you to fight gravity to pull your hand back up, so the opponent's glove often wins that race when they've feinted your hand out of position. People swat for the same reason they turn their shoulders into catches, to make it more forceful, which is important. These are trained boxers throwing hard, straight punches at you after all, so you need to be able to meet their punches with some force, or else they're going to punch your gloves back into your face. But while catching strong is key, you don't need to move your hand downward to do it. Just turn the thumb in and drive forward about 3 to 8 inches. That's plenty of room to put power behind the motion, and since your hand is moving forward instead of down, it's much easier to pull back to guard. This forward motion also creates defensive traffic from start to finish, blocking the jab lane for its entirety so that their punch can't get through, whereas downward swatting catches require perfect timing, giving you only a split second of real coverage. So practice this motion. not this one. Now that we know how to catch, let's look at some of the ways Bivol and Coley use this technique, in combination with other proactive cross defenses, to take 2 or more punches offline at the same time. Admittedly, not all the clips here will follow this rigid textbook definition of a jab catch, which is true of most techniques. Sometimes you'll see parrying at the wrist or patting the jab down, but the main 2-in-1 defense principle still applies. With all that said, let's dive into these 5 defensive pairs. Number 1, catch and block, also known as catching from close guard. This is the most basic defensive pairing on the list and one you're probably already doing. With the elbows pinned in, slide the lead arm up to the close guard position as you catch the jab with the backhand. I like to think of crushing their center line between my palm and the vertical pillar of my lead arm. Like all defensive techniques, this pairing has pros and cons. On the plus side, covering the target area protects you from many punches at once, the cross, the hook, or the overhand, and it's not a huge commitment. Your lead hand is still in position to block elsewhere, attack, or transition to long guard techniques. Since this block doesn't involve the shoulders, hips, or feet, it can be combined with other movements to layer your defense. And this is true of most of the techniques coming up as well. The downside of this block is that it's very passive. It doesn't give you any control of the opponent's punch lanes or make it harder for them to attack. You just stop them from landing clean. Your opponent is still free to punch, so you can still eat a lot of impact if you don't make the read in time to slip, duck, or pull from this position. But no defense is perfect. While it's not a surefire solution, you should still drill this pairing to death, as it puts you in a relatively safe starter position with built-in defense if you completely miss the read, and the freedom to do just about anything you want. Number 2, catch and cover, otherwise known as catching from high guard. Instead of covering the target, our lead hand covers the path of the punch. Starting in the close guard block position we just covered, lift and extend your lead hand 4 to 10 inches into the opponent's cross lane to create defensive traffic. Make sure to hold your hand higher than theirs and keep the elbow down, ready to drop on body shots or shoot forward into a jab or long guard technique. This obstacle can be enough to stop your opponent from punching outright, but if it isn't, you're still in a strong position to catch or down parry with the lead hand, with the parry being especially effective here since you've got the high ground with gravity on your side. Again, no defense is perfect, and this one leaves openings for overhands and looping shots, which can thread around your arm if you're too static or fail to make the read. It also relies more on timing, and you'll need a good defensive radar to make this work. But as long as you know to watch for looping punches and you've got some reactive defenses ready to go, it's a good option to frustrate an opponent with a good 1-2. Number 3, catch and crowd, using traps or traffic, otherwise known as catching from long guard or LG1. Tapping again into long guard theory, this pairing combines the rear hand catch with a more aggressive type of lead hand traffic to disrupt or stop the cross before it starts. It's as easy as extending your lead hand into the opponent's cross lane, which is also their center line, to block the path the punch needs to take. If you're dealing with an overzealous ref, you can do this using jab mechanics, punching the air and letting the hand linger, or you can take the LG1 position discussed here. If your reach or range allows it, you can also leave your hand on top of theirs to trap it in place and buy yourself a split second to make a move. I like to call this trapping the hands or just trapping. But whether you decide to trap the hand or create aggressive defensive traffic, you will have stopped the cross and ended up in a long guard position, LG1, where all of the openings and opportunities discussed in this long guard series now apply. Number 4, catch and jab. You can and should catch and jab the face to disrupt attacks, of course, but you should also occasionally target the opponent's rear hand. Jabbing at the glove is one of the safest and easiest ways to stop the cross before it starts. The glove will be easier to hit, being closer and less vital than the head, and a good opponent will even help you out by instinctively moving their hand to block, catch, or parry as your jab gets close. Jabbing the glove is also safer than a real attack because there's no commitment. Since you're not punching a real target or scoring area, there's no reason to commit power into the shot. Just give their hand a sharp poke. No commitment means no reaching, no shifting your weight, no leaning your torso forward, so your opponent will have a harder time countering the counter or making you miss badly. Be ready in case they follow your jab back with a cross, but since you didn't commit any power, you should win that race anyway. This technique won't score you any points, but it will keep their cross busy for a split second, during which you'll also be in LG1 with plenty of fun ways to follow up. Jabbing the hand a few times early in the fight can also make it easier to land for real. After a few, the opponent will start to feel good about their jab defense. It will feel effortless as they find they barely have to move their hand to get a satisfying catch, not realizing you're firing it right into their palm. You'll have given them a false sense of security and a false sense of your jab range, and once they're comfortable, you can surprise them with a longer, harder one directed at their face. Finally, number 5, we're looking at the double catch, which really boils down to covering the opponent's center line with both hands at once, creating a wall or catcher's mitt we can use to pick off either straight punch while staying in position to deal with other attacks. Coley shared this on his YouTube channel, which I recommend you check out, and he does a great job showcasing this position's ability to block any punch with only minor adjustments. But beware, this is an advanced defense that requires good timing and an eye for reads. Don't worry, I'm going to take a closer look at this position in a future video, specifically focusing on how this position can be used in conjunction with the LG1 and LG2 techniques to give you more long defense options. So there you have it. 5 strong and beginner-friendly defensive pairs you can use to stop the jab and cross in one beat. As always, knowing about these techniques is not enough. You will need to drill these 5 options to death while shadowboxing between combinations on the bag and while you develop your head movement and footwork. Lucky for you, that's easy to do, and it really pays off. Like I said, these defensive pairs won't solve all of your problems, but by thinking one punch ahead and drilling them in training, we can act one punch ahead on fight night. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, stay safe, study hard, and train smart.